Welcome to QueerTWENTY, the cohort of 2022. QueerTWENTY is egomonk's annual flagship program where we celebrate exceptional queer Indians succeeding in fields such as social justice, commerce, science, arts, etc. Today we have a very important person with us who is radically changing the face of primary education in India, Rohit Kumar. Rohit is the CEO of Apni Shala, a non-profit organization based out of Bombay, which is empowering children through socio-emotional learning using art, drama, games, and community work. So, without further ado, let's welcome Rohit. Rohit, thank you so much for joining us today.
Apni Shala is all about equipping children with a stable mental health. And the concept of socio-emotional learning is pretty radical for a country like India. So could you tell me, what is the origin story behind opening Apni Shala?
So I think when we began in 2013, the foundation was started by three of my friends, Amrita, Shweta and Anukriti. The idea of Apni Shala came from the place that when you look at our schools, right? I mean, the schools that I went to, the schools that possibly maybe you also went to, there's a huge focus on academic learning. That's why you will see that there's a huge focus on IIT jana hai, IIM jana hai kind of scenario in our country, right? And because of that, what also happens is that there's a one-dimensional development that the schools are currently catering to. What we are also noticing, and especially coming from my own background, when I was working with young people, there was a lot of conversation. I was working with youth in an organization called Akanksha Foundation, and it's a lovely organization. What we are noticing there is that many young people are going through a lot of distress. There's a lot of, especially like teenagers, like when I was a teenager, just thinking about romance and sex and joy and frustrations and exams and bullying in the school, right? All of this is going on, right? But many a times schools, by choice or at times unconsciously, just do not cater to this. And because of that, the kind of manifestations that happens in either in the society or in people's lives is very distressing. Just to give you a little bit of background, WHO has already declared that India is going through a mental health pandemic. Right? 93% of our schools do not have a professional counselor. And in a recent survey conducted by a very reputed institution, almost 40% students have reported, and this is, I'm talking about private schools as well, right? Which is kind of seen as a good schools.
Yeah.
But then, वो bias है, वो जो है, but the 40% of students have reported that they go through bullying, they go through harassment, and that leaves a lot of deep impact. And when we look at some of these data, what we also know is that children living in poverty are 3 times more susceptible to mental health issues as they grow up, right? Because the systemic poverty brings a lot of other triggers in the ecosystem, whether deprivation का trigger हो गया, violence का trigger हो गया, right? And that creates a very strong mental health issue. Now, when we were looking at education, I was software engineer, but then I transitioned into education. I did my master's in education. No one was really talking about this phenomena. While we were talking about child development, we were talking about understanding the brain. We were not talking about understanding the mind and what happens in the mind and what is the repercussion of that in a young person's learning and growth, right? So that's where Apni Shala's story began, but it also began from a place of inducing joyfulness in just ways of being.
When you say that, like you work with children as well as you work with the environment, how exactly do you interact with the environment that may lead to stressors?
I think there are a couple of things that I can speak of here. One is there are structured programs that happens with students in the classroom setting. So say, for example, we through our fellowship program that we run, we do once in a week social emotional learning sessions in the classrooms. When I say in the classroom, sometimes we don't have a classroom setting. कभी-कभी gallery में बैठ के करना पड़ता है, ground में बैठ के करना पड़ता है. But the sense is that at least 1 hour of SEL opportunity starting from grade 1 all the way to grade 10, right? And that's something that we do, especially when we enter a new school, because that's an teachers and principals are very okay kind of giving 1 hour a week kind of situation, right? We also start, so in the ecosystem work, we primarily identify who are the key ecosystem players. So in a school setting, the key players are the principals, the staff, which is teachers, helpers, other people, and the caregivers. Caregivers, when we use the word caregiver from a point of view that it could be children's parents, it could be their siblings, it could be their grandparents, basically whoever the primary caregiver to that young person is, right? So what we do is we start doing some work with them on their social emotional well-being. Because we realize that the adults are not the problem as well. If we say that people are not the problem, not just the young people, also the adults who have not received well-being based spaces for themselves. So especially in municipal school setting, like the kind of work that the principal and the teachers have to do is enormous. Not just educational, but also administrative work. COVID aa gaya, to COVID duties aa gayi, right? So that kind of situation is there in the government school settings. Now, many a times our teachers are not even asked, how are you doing? What's going on, right?
That's such a truth. Yeah.
And that's how we start our trainings. We don't even call them trainings, we call them campaigns, because our intention is that how can we come together as a community? Because we are there in the school, you are already there, and we believe that teachers know far better than what we know about the school or students, right? So for that reason, what we do is that we work with teachers to one, understand हम 1 घंटा आते हैं लेकिन बाकी के वीक में क्या हो रहा है स्टूडेंट्स के साथ, आपके साथ क्या हो रहा है, and from there we begin. That's our journey, that's how we start. Likewise with caregivers, we do not get a lot of time in the beginning. We get one meeting in a quarter kind of scenario. So we get to meet the parents at least 3 or 4 times in a year. But the intention is that when the key adults in the ecosystem are able to understand this, right, they will then start changing the systems. I'll give you an example. We started working with a particular school, and last year during COVID, we said that teachers के साथ से well-being पे काम करना है, right? And then we said that now that we are working on well-being, कि आपको क्या महसूस हो रहा है, आपकी लाइफ में क्या चल रहा है? A principal of a school said that I have taken this pause for the first time in last 1 year, and thank you for facilitating that. Likewise, in COVID, we moved our parents' meeting online. And so it took a lot of work on just moving everything online. Like पहले तो students के साथ का काम, फिर क्योंकि parents बाजू में बैठते थे, घर छोटे होते हैं, तो how do you kind of then also bring parents? And we did a parent school meeting online with one of our Kurla schools. And towards the end, a mother started crying. So the facilitator asked कि दीदी क्या हुआ? तो the mother said that मेरे गली के सारे लोग छोड़ के चले गए अपने गांव. They actually walked back home, and you know this phenomena happened in Bombay and in many other cities where people started walking back towards home during COVID. हमारा ही घर बचा है, और इस वक्त पिछले कुछ महीनों से मैंने दूसरे अडल्ट से बात ही नहीं किया है. I have only spoken to my children, and मेरे पति जब घर आते हैं वो इतने थके रहते हैं, उनसे बात नहीं होती. तो आज पहली बार जो बाकी लोग पेरेंट्स से मिली हूँ मैं, उनसे आज ऑनलाइन ये बात हो पाई. Then the other parents started kind of chiming in, अरे तू टेंशन मत ले, मैं नंबर शेयर करता हूँ, मुझे कॉल कर देना. And that community that kind of formed itself, right? Then they decided कि हम लोग हर महीने मिल सकते हैं, right? So our quarter meetings for that particular school turned into monthly meetings for at least next couple of months, जब तक possible हुआ, right? So when this starts happening, what we also notice is that then the ecosystem players take the ownership. Then we move some of our schools to phase 2, where we say that now are there schools who are very interested and excited to take on more ownership, right? And in that, then we start working with the teachers more intensely. And all of this is voluntary. We talk to the principals and teachers. We say that अगर आपके पास time है, आप करना चाहते हैं, तो हम यहाँ पे खड़े हैं.
In India, we have this hierarchy of vocations. कि पहले साइंस आएगा, फिर कॉमर्स आएगा, फिर आर्ट्स आएगा, and social work and developmental sector is not a first choice. It wasn't for our parents, and when we choose it, it's usually not मतलब it's not usually cheered upon. So, but what was your experience?
So पापा की क्या होता ना कि पैसे की दिक्कत है, वो मुझसे बच्चों से नहीं बोलते, right? तो अभी मुझे टेंशन थी, मुझे मेडिसिन क्यों नहीं करने दे रहे, मेरा बायो तो अच्छा है ना, आई वांट टू एटलीस्ट वो कर लूं, लेकिन ठीक है वो तो नहीं हो सकता. I did a computer engineering, and then I think I did pretty decent because वहाँ पे नया स्टाफ मिला, नए ग्रुप ऑफ फ्रेंड्स मिले, बहुत अच्छे फ्रेंड्स थे, तो पढ़ने में मजा आया. नई चीज थी, तभी तभी नया नया आया था. I'm talking about 2000 to 2003, right? कंप्यूटर्स का काफी नया दौर था, तो सीख लिया. एंड देन उसके बाद फिर I did my masters from Somaya in Mumbai, Somaya Management Institute, which again I did my masters in software systems. After that, when I started working with TCS, I think that's when I kind of अभी पहले 6 महीना IT इंजीनियर्स के पास में पैसा नया नया आता है. So what do you do on the weekend? दारू, सिनेमा, स्लीप, दारू, सिनेमा. मैं दारू पीता नहीं, राइट? तो मैं उनका कितना चखना खाऊंगा. I need to do something else with life, right? कितना मॉल घूम लेंगे, और कुछ खरीदना होता भी नहीं है, इतने भी पैसे नहीं कि चीजें खरीदते बैठो, राइट? So after that, so एक email आया and I went and kind of went to the classroom, and I think for first 6 months I just sat in the back because I didn't have the courage to go and teach. I was like, मैं क्या ही पढ़ा लूंगा ना, और हम इंजीनियर्स को लगता है कि अच्छा हम इंग्लिश मैथ तो पढ़ा ही सकते हैं और कुछ नहीं, right? So that's how it all began. But I first internally moved in TCS in their Maitri corporate Maitri department. So जब तक मैं TCS में था मेरे पापा को प्रॉब्लम नहीं थी, तुम TCS में रह के कुछ भी करो, because TCS was that, you know, टाटास को बहुत लुक अप करते हैं हमारे सोसाइटी में, राइट?
एज अ ब्रांड नेम,
राइट? तो तब तक मेरा टाइटल भी नहीं चेंज हुआ, तो मेरी सैलरी भी चेंज हुई, तो एवरीथिंग वाज फाइन. ही केप्ट कॉलिंग, टेलिंग हिज फ्रेंड्स कि अच्छा ये तो सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर है, राइट? एंड आई हैड ऑलरेडी मूव्ड विद इन इंटरनली TCS, सो एटलीस्ट ही न्यू दैट आई हैव मूव्ड. आफ्टर दैट आई आल्सो रियलाइज्ड इज दैट कि while I'm volunteering and I'm doing all of this work by my interest, and that's all good, but I did not really understand education. And दूसरी चीज ये थी कि in a corporate CSR, corporates do all sorts of things. Women empowerment भी करेंगे, education भी करेंगे, and I think it's fine because they have to cater to multiple interests in the organization, right? But I had become very clear that education is the area that I want to get into. And I think that's when I kind of applied for my master's at Tata Institute of Social Sciences. पहले साल रिजेक्ट किया, दूसरा रिजेक्ट किया, तीसरा इनफैक्ट इंटरव्यूअर्स लाफ्ड एट मी, तुम वापस आ गए. So finally I got into that course because that was the only course where I could work and study, and I knew that my economic situation is not such that I can do a full-time course. So I had to do something which is high quality, and मेरे से correspondence भी नहीं होता क्योंकि मैं खुद से नहीं पढ़ पाता, मुझे कोई चाहिए जो मुझे थोड़ा गाइड करता रहे, राइट? तो this course was, मेरे लिए ही डिजाइन है तो मुझे तो देना ही पड़ेगा, right? So I kept trying, finally I got into that. And I think when I got into that, that's when I informed my family that hey, I'm moving to this, I'm joining social sector, and it's an organization where I will, and again in social sector I didn't move into teaching directly. I moved into an impact role, which was a data management role, data impact role, and I was a data warehousing software. When I was doing software engineering, my work profile was data warehousing. So I found something which would use my skills, because I wouldn't be able to survive on a teacher's salary in Mumbai, and I had to support myself, right? That's another problem in the system. जो आपने बोला ना, वो जो hierarchy वो बहुत real है. Nordic countries में teaching is one of the highest paid professions. And
as it should be. It is the greatest work an adult can do for like coming generation.
Exactly. However, in India, we pay people who build a software for a bank more than what we pay to people who are actually building the human beings, right? But that's another travesty of this. But I realized that वो नहीं survive हो जाएगा. So then I found a job which was, so my salary was coming down, but it wasn't coming down to a place where I couldn't survive. So I did my budgeting कि मुझे कितना लगेगा, मुझे घर से पैसा ना लेना. So when I spoke to my family, my dad was kind of pissed off for first couple of months. He didn't speak to me and all of that, but he would pass on the phone to my mom. But my mom asked me one question: "तू खुश है क्या?"
What does a care-based policy look like in a corporate sector?
And frankly, when we think about care-based policies, the idea is that going back to the same basic concept I spoke in the beginning for students, opportunities for developing social-emotional competencies, learning and practicing, and building an ecosystem that is inclusive, caring and compassionate. यही दो चीजें करनी. So how can I create opportunities for my staff and team to build their social emotional competencies? And for that, then what are the trainings available? What is the mentoring and supervision available? What kind of spaces of well-being available? So to give you an example again, we focus a lot around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for that, during recruitment itself, we name it for anyone who's joining us. That ongoingly, till the time you are at Apni Shala, you will be working on your own understanding of your own self-awareness of your identities, how that influence your life, your work with your colleagues, and your work with the students, right? So we kind of on a monthly basis 3 hours का training होता है जहाँ पे हम gender, caste, class, neurodiversity इन सब के ऊपर बात करते हैं, right? और बात करने का मतलब we actually use a lot of theater and art and try to make it as experiential as possible so that we are able to unpack the trauma associated with some of these experiences, marginalization associated with these experiences, privilege associated with these, because privilege by itself is like it is hindering me to build human relationships with each other, right? So how can we build allyship, build communities, right? So that's one piece of work. Then also, for example, we do a lot of mindfulness retreats for the team. We do trainings on narrative practices. So all of these opportunities. For example, हमारी जो curriculum gatherings होती है, curriculum के ऊपर जो training होती है ना, उसमें भी एक goal है that how do I identify my triggers around this topic. So if I have to take, say, a topic around anxiety or gender in the classroom with grade 6 or grade 9, I will first process it. When I talk about anxiety, what kind of stuff students say, and when they say, what kind of triggers will come to me. Using the community of that team to then process that together before you go into the classroom, right? So these are some of the opportunities where the teams get to learn and practice their own social emotional competencies, whether self-awareness, self-management, social awareness. Then the other piece is that how are we building inclusive systems, right? So the team itself reviews the entire HR policy at least once in 2 years. That is this policy responding to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Is this policy mindful? Is this policy responding to narrative practices? So I'll give you another example where we used to have this entry-exit registers, right? जहाँ पे टीम जब मॉर्निंग में आती है तो साइन करती है कि हम इतने बजे आए, और जब जाती है तो साइन करती है. That was like a couple of years back. What we realize is that it induces a lot of shame and guilt. It takes away the flexibility of if on some days I'm late, what do I do if I miss? So and it is not centering trust in the team, and it just induces distress. एक तो इंसान लेट हो गया, ऊपर से ये अभी आके साइन करना है, मैं लिख रहा हूँ कि हाँ मैं 15 मिनट लेट आया, तो वो गिल्ट डिस्ट्रेस में किस तरह से कन्वर्ट होता है, राइट? सो द टीम सेड इट इज नॉट वर्किंग फॉर अस. We understand the accountability piece. Can there be another mechanism for this accountability? So what we did was we took away the register, and then we brought something called a Google form कि आप जिस दिन आपको in a month's time 3 times you can be late, कभी ट्रेन लेट हो गई, कुछ हो गया, but उसके बाद it will be counted as a half day leave, which is fine. Team was not that's not the issue. The issue was that in that moment I have to write it, and that induces guilt and shame, right? So they said then we changed it to a Google form कि आपको दिन में जब टाइम मिले, जब आप सेटल डाउन हो जाए, उस दिन खाली आप वो फॉर्म भर दीजिए कि हाँ मैं इस टाइम पे आया था या आई थी. So that the HR has the information what they need. No one else is seeing it because register में सब देखते हैं ना. It just goes to HR. So वो जो publicness of that guilt and shame है, that is taken out, right? So this again the suggestion came from the team. HR implemented it because उनकी जो need थी, that they need the information, that is also being served, but not inducing shame and guilt and blame for that. So how can we ongoingly do that? अभी ऐसा नहीं है कि सारे policies वैसे. Now कुछ चीजें हमने improve की, आज वो ठीक हुई, then can we review again, and then we will find new insights and we will change some of those again, right? And that's an ongoing work. And I think when organizations, I think what we understood is that when organizations are intentional, when they really want to do this, the first thing that we have to talk about, what is the value and culture we are centering our organizational design in. So अपनी शाला में ना पहले हमारी वैल्यूज हुआ करती थी एक्सेलेंस, ओपननेस टू लर्निंग एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा, एंड हर साल टीम ये सवाल करती थी कि एक्सेलेंस वैल्यू बहुत डिस्ट्रेस देती है या नहीं जमती, क्या मतलब है इसका? जब संस्था शुरू की थी तो जो समझ थी उसके हिसाब से बनाया था, राइट? Here we went through an organizational rediscovery of Apni Shala's values, and the values that came up are compassion, trust, and equity. That's what the team wants to live by, right? So we changed our values. We said, नहीं, ये संस्था की values नहीं है. अभी ये 3 values हैं that we want to kind of prioritize.
Within the LGBTQ community, who needs an outside support?
I would say anyone who needs, but I think even within the LGBT community, at this point, there's a hierarchy, right? Cisgendered gay men take over all the discourses. So how can we think about some of these things? And this is a calling for myself as well, how I think about that. What is happening to trans folks in the community? What kind of allyship do I need to offer there? What kind of allyship? How do we kind of make some of these nuanced discussions around asexuality, right? Become more known and visible? I think some of those pieces, I think, at this point, I think require attention.
Okay. Who is your favorite queer role model? If you have one.
I actually don't have one.
Okay. All right. What's the best thing about being queer?
I think it adds so much of colors to my life.
Okay. What is one thing that scares you the most?
That I still cannot hold my partner's hand without thinking twice who is watching.
What is that inspires you the most?
That my students come back and tell me that me sharing my stories have inspired them to access their own stories.
All right. Your immediate reaction to the following. Workplace equity.
Joyfulness.
Homophobia.
Let's get over it with it.
Allyship.
Strength.
Ambition.
Ridiculous.
Politics.
Important.
India.
Lovely.
Oh.
Rohit, thank you so much for this immensely engaging conversation. We are so grateful to have you in our 2022 cohort.